Generation Z. Those born from 1997 to 2012 make up Generation Z. This generation consists of true digital natives who grew up with TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat. They prefer watching short videos and speak the emoji language fluently. They seek instant gratification and have quite short attention spans. They're very open about mental health issues, but also have high anxiety levels. They oppose traditional career models and want flexible working conditions. They pursue meaningful work rather than just making money. In this video, you'll discover 15 different generations, and you'll probably recognize yourself in one of them. If you think I've added value to you, don't forget to subscribe and tell me which generation you belong to in the comments. Millennials. Millennials, born from 1981 to 1996, are the first generation to grow up during the widespread adoption of the internet. Work-life balance is extremely important to them. They want to build careers but don't compromise on their personal time. They actively use social media but aren't as addicted as Generation Z. This generation isn't brand loyal and prefers buying experiences rather than material goods. Because they had to cope with economic crises, they're postponing marriage and having children. They're an educated generation but face difficulties finding jobs. Generation X. Those born from 1965 to 1980 are known as the Bridge Generation. They grew up with MTV, are the last representatives of the television era, but have also adapted to technology. They carry independent, realistic, and hard-working characteristics. They show loyal and stable behavior in work life. They value family values, but divorce rates are also high. They're distant from technology but have managed to adapt. They focus on saving money and prefer safe investments. Baby Boomers. Baby Boomers, born from 1946 to 1964, grew up during the post-war economic prosperity period. Hard work, loyalty, and discipline are their core values. They struggle to adapt to technology but show an attitude open to learning. They value hierarchy in work life and have a low tendency to question authority. They've made serious savings for retirement and focused on acquiring property. They support traditional family structure and value social status. Silent Generation. The Silent Generation, born from 1928 to 1945, are children of the Great Depression and World War II era. They're extremely disciplined, frugal, and hardworking. Although they struggle most with technology, they've managed to learn basic applications. They're tightly bound to traditional values and tend to resist change. They greatly value obedience and following rules. They behave extremely cautiously in financial matters and avoid taking risks. Greatest Generation. The Greatest Generation, born from 1901 to 1927, is a strong generation that lived through 2 World Wars and survived the Great Depression. They were named this way by Tom Brokaw because they were shaped by great struggles. Sacrifice, hard work, and patriotism are their basic characteristics. They show resilience against difficulties and a tendency to unite. They're tightly bound to traditional values and have a highly developed sense of social responsibility. Most aren't alive today, but the legacy they left is strong. Lost Generation. The Lost Generation, born from 1883 to 1900, is a generation that experienced the trauma of World War I. They were named this way by Gertrude Stein. They began questioning traditional values and experienced great disappointments. Their tendency toward art and literature is strong. Great writers like Hemingway and Fitzgerald emerged from this generation. They experienced a sense of being lost in the post-war world, and this was reflected in their works. Generation Alpha. Generation Alpha, born from 2010 to 2025, is being shaped completely in the digital world. They'll be the first generation to encounter artificial intelligence technologies. They're growing up surrounded by voice assistants, smart toys, and interactive technologies. Their attention spans are very short, but their multitasking abilities are developed. They prefer digital entertainment over physical games. Generation Beta. Generation Beta, expected to be born from 2025 to 2040, will be the representative of the future generation. They'll grow up with hologram technology, virtual reality, and augmented reality. They'll be the first generation to experience humanity's transition to the space age. They'll grow up in a world rebuilt after environmental disasters. They may never see the traditional school system and will receive completely personalized education. Human-machine interaction will be natural for them, and they won't make a physical-digital distinction. Generation Jones. Generation Jones, born from 1954 to 1965, is a special group caught between baby boomers and Generation X. They longed for the Woodstock spirit but couldn't experience it. They're a generation that experienced economic disappointments. They grew up with great expectations, but realities turned out different. That's why they're called Jones, meaning longing. They carry both idealistic and realistic characteristics. Despite wanting change, they had to settle for the status quo. Microgeneration. Microgeneration, born from 1977 to 1983, is also known as the Oregon Trail generation. They had analog childhoods but stepped into digital adulthood. They're the transition generation that experienced the first computer games and internet. Knowing both the old and new worlds makes them special. Their technology adaptation abilities are strong, but their nostalgia feelings are also high. They experienced the final period of CDs and cassette players. Generation C, a special sub-generation that spent their childhood and youth years during the COVID-19 pandemic period. They grew up with habits of social isolation, remote education, and mask wearing. They may experience setbacks in social skills, but their digital adaptation abilities are very high. They may exhibit obsessive behaviors regarding hygiene. They may show post-traumatic stress symptoms and are anxious about the future. Because they're accustomed to flexible lifestyles, their adaptation abilities are strong. Futuristic generation. The futuristic generation, expected to be born after 2040, will be the space colonies generation. They'll be the first human generation that could be born and raised on Mars. They'll live completely artificial intelligence-integrated lives. They'll live in an era where interplanetary travel is normal. They'll be children of an age where human DNA is modified and cyborg technologies are widespread. They're still completely imaginary, but they have the potential to become reality, not science fiction. Generation Glass. Generation Glass, born from 1980 to 2000, is known as the fragility generation. They grew up in overly protective family environments and tend to avoid taking risks. They're a generation that seeks safe spaces and is sensitive to criticism. They carry perfectionist tendencies, but also have high fears of failure. They grew up under the pressures created by social media. Their anxiety and depression rates are higher compared to other generations. Internet generation. Internet generation, born from 1995 to 2005, is the first social media generation. They encountered MySpace, Facebook, and MSN Messenger and created digital identities. They're the first generation to experience the concept of online friendship. They learned about cyberbullying and the importance of digital footprints. They experienced the process of creating identity in both real and virtual worlds. They're the generation that first experienced the internet's impact on social life. We've explored the characteristics of 15 different generations. Each has its own unique experiences, challenges, and characteristic features. Which generation do you belong to, and were you able to find your own characteristics in these descriptions? If you found the video useful, don't forget to like it and share which generation you're from in the comments. See you in new videos. Farewell.